you meet with the school official, or
No, I didn't meet with anyone this time.
police, EMT? No, none of those people were on the committee, right?
No.
All right. I know you talked about the tax maps, and the tax maps have been an issue here for as long as I remember. Is this going to be adopted before the tax maps are updated?
I can't really answer that question. I don't know if planning board's gonna adopt it. I don't know when the tax maps are gonna be completed, because that's not, something that I'm in trouble with.
Is this going to be adopted before the tax maps are corrected?
I would think it's going to be adopted, and then we're going to do something tonight, and it goes to the council.
So it'll be done before the tax maps actually are corrected and reflect what you're doing? And we're going to be back in this vote again where people don't know where anything
That would
is?
just be pure speculation. We
What's
can't-
going to be speculation?
We can't opine as to what's going to occur at the council level. I mean, if it's passed here this evening, it'll go on to the council. So I don't think I can provide an answer to your question.
Mr. Cotton, your office is working on that now?
Yes.
Do you know how long?
It's about, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how long it's going to take. It's an approval process that goes along with it.
I've been waiting 10 years.
Anything else, Malcolm?
There was a statement that says to promote safe, efficient traffic circulation system that serves the community. What does that mean?
Exactly what it says.
I don't understand, but it's words. How are you going to do that? What was the thought behind it? How is that going to happen? What does that mean? Promote, it's just words. What does that mean? How will it be, what is it and how will it be implemented? Is it ferries? I mean, I know you talked about a ferry service, but for those of us who don't take the ferry, how are we going to promote the traffic? It's a pretty sentence, but what does it mean?
Other than to tell you it means what it says.
But it doesn't say anything,
Sure.
it's just words. How are you going to do that? And I don't want to be argumentative. I don't know what that means. No, she didn't answer the question. She said what it means. It says what it means. It says, but I don't know what it means. I asked her, no. So you don't know, there's no meaning behind that? It's just words? I don't understand. How are you going to promote safe, efficient traffic circulation system that serves the community? What does that mean? What is the system? What is the system? Rail, boat, motorcycle?
The system obviously consists of roads, it consists of sidewalks,
So
it
what-
consists of the walkway, it consists of ferries.
But you're gonna promote safe and efficient traffic circulation. I don't understand. We have River Road. We're unlike North Bergen, Weehawken, Cliffside Park, Fort Lee, we have no back roads. We have no shortcuts. I don't understand what that means. Like, if you wrote it, there should have been some meaning behind it, a plan. So how are you going to promote safe, efficient traffic circulation? Trees? I don't know. What does that mean?
Captain, you mean for further development in any areas there will be sidewalks? I know we discussed that in the last couple.
But that's not,
Well, that is safe for safety, that's for
That's
safety.
traffic.
Yeah, I
Traffic
mean, it's
to
obviously
me-
gonna be on
it doesn't say pedestrian thing, it says traffic. Circulation system. That refers to traffic.
It will be on a development by development basis through the site plan review process.
Oh my God, that again, it means nothing. It's just words. Do you understand? It means words that we have to live with. Those of us who are going to continue to live in this town, pay taxes, send our kids to the schools, words. And I'm not blaming her. She's doing what she's told to do here. I'm blaming you guys because you continuously do this. And at the request of who? A developer who's not even going to live here either anymore. This is insanity. It's insanity. It's insanity. I'm sorry. I'm really frustrated. And the thing is, in 1999, when I ran for council, my opponent said, we need all this development for rateables, it'll keep your taxes down. Well, my taxes have gone up every quarter. I have never gotten a tax bill that if there wasn't an increase, ever, ever. And I understand you pay taxes. I want to pay taxes for good service. I want to pay taxes to help my town. But I want something in return. I want a good quality of life.
All right.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir. Please come on up, state your name, spell your last name and your address, please.
Hi, I'm David Randerson, 26 Palisade Terrace. I live up the north end. Yeah, I've been living here for almost 7 years now. Moved into Hudson Park. Seen these developments happen. I was there when they built it. I purchased before it was built. And I saw a postage stamp of park. It was built for that. And that's fine, that's good. For me, I want to see that type of reciprocity happen with as many of the developments that happen, but also I think we really need to pay attention to parking. Because right now, I live up the street from the River Palm restaurant, okay, and I cannot park. I do not have a driveway on my unit, and I cannot park to the River Palm. Love the restaurant, love the fact that people come here for that restaurant, because that makes Edgewater what it is, because it's a world-class restaurant. But parking is not getting any better, and yet each house that goes down on my street, they replace it with 6 units, and the residents cannot park. We have no parking. The majority of those places do not have parking. We do not have garages. We have parking, and they build parking right in front of the place. So I'm not going to complain about variances, because I need a variance so that I can build a carport in front of my place. So I'm really asking the board to really think about and to to rethink the community plan. One, for these parks, so that we can have parks for our kids. I've got 2 kids. I moved into the area that I live because of the GW school. I'm right next to the GW school. I have a toddler going into the school. I found out now that there will be no pre-K in the GW school, a school that I purposely moved from Hudson Park to be next to that school. And now there's not pre-K. And class sizes have gone from 12 in a class, 19 in a class. And that's not going down, that's going up. I taught way back. And I've tried to teach a class of 20 plus kids, and nobody's learning when it gets that size, especially at the pre-K level. And so, these are all things that, I'm seeing happen. I'm very, very, I want to be more involved. Hopefully you guys will see me more out as a part of this. And, because we're really just, as parents and as people who live here in the community, we're having a tough time. My taxes go up, and I'm not seeing infrastructure being built by the people who are coming in and developing. I'm not seeing, what's going to do about sewage? When we have the other 2,000 units go up here, okay, is that developer going to increase the size of the sewage plant? Are these things that are part of a master plan that's really going to think about the environment, think about the quality of life for our kids, think about the pedestrian walkway, think about the connections, and think about all of the various things that make a city and a community and gives us the quality of life. We live in the Gold Coast, come on. This is the highest, one of the high, in Bergen County, this is the highest, one of the highest per capita income areas. Yet, I can't send my kid to a class at the school that's right across from me. And I'm really worried about that, because that cuts into my budget as a parent. And so, again, I ask you all to really rethink and think about a master plan that really thinks about all of the components of the community, and to also think for us about what we can do to really kind of take some of the burden off of us, because our taxes are going up, but we're not feeling the infrastructure being built as a part of those taxes. And so, again, I wanted to speak to that. And also just how can we learn, how can we find out what the answers are to some of the questions that are posed here? Because, I want to know, and I looked for, through the website, I looked for, through various outlets that are out there, but I don't know even how to follow back up to find out what the decisions were and what your decisions are in the community. So if you could, help us and, just let us know exactly how that is. And, again, we're here to help. I would love to participate in a master plan development, as a community member. So thinking about that, thinking about opening that up and allowing us to be a part of that would make, I think, all of us feel better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else in the public wish to be heard? Yes, sir? State your name, spell your last name, and your address, please.
Barry Arndt, 168 Undercliff, Edgewater. So,
Could you spell your last name just for the record?
yeah, A-R-N-D-T. So, I'm here, I don't know how to do developmental speak, but I'm here to give you a reality check on what happened in my neighborhood, to show you just what a fragile balance there is occurring. Because we had a parking situation in my neighborhood. I lived behind Alcoa, and where Alcoa was and behind the tank farms. And so the parking situation was okay. And then a few years ago, they approved an affordable housing project that was never ever be approved. There was never ever going to be housing approved for that piece of land because they said it was too many units there when Alcoa was developed. Never ever would have happened, and it happened. It's only 39 units. There's 400 in Avalon. How bad could it be? Well, it is bad. And the reason it's bad is because of the parking situations. They only allowed one parking space per unit, and they charge for parking. So as a result, a lot of the people are parking out on Undercliff. It's become really, really crowded just by one mistake. One mistake. Now, as smart as you guys are, I say that you're guessing. Because there's so many variables, you can't get them all down. You can't nail them all down. I know you're working hard, and I appreciate it. I can't imagine sitting through these meetings over and over again. But you can't nail all the variables down. There's just too many. And the traffic, I mean, from an overview, just imagine if we took responsibility for the quality of life in our town, just to put something like sidewalks on both sides of River Road, just to make it happen. I'm a walker. Not only are there no sidewalks on both sides, but the river walk, half of it's been devastated for years. We won't even talk about the park. So there isn't a lot of places where you can walk without having to stop and wait for it for a long time, cross the street and back and forth. Oxon Hill, I go up and down this hill all the time, and I see people, baby carriages, walking down it. And I hope that it doesn't take somebody getting killed for us to take action on that. But with all the development we're doing, why can't we just put that on our radar and make it a decent road with some place safe to walk? I mean, I know a way to do it, but I'm not the builder, and I'm not the one that has the money to do this. But there has to be a collective will, and it's in your hands to dictate this collective will. So what I'm asking you to do is err on the side of underdevelopment. If you think that it will probably work with 18 stories, go with 15. I know that's asking a lot, but we're in trouble here. I love Edgewater, and we're in trouble. We got two roads. And now one of them's one way at the other end now, and I wouldn't doubt if Lower Undercliff's going to be one way after a while all the way down. So we're in trouble. So I'm asking you to please look for what could happen and err on the side. And give us some sidewalks, give us maybe another little parkette here and there. Our parks are pathetic. How about a park here and there? So that's all I'm here to say, is that what happened with 39 little units didn't work. It created a monster problem down by me. And if you do that on a park with 2,000 units, it doesn't take much of a factor of error to have a real problem, much more than what we got now.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Anybody else from the public? Mr. Burgess? Just for the record again, state your name, spell your last name and your address, please.
Thank you. Joseph Burgess, Burgis, of the firm Burgess Associates, located at 25 Westwood Avenue in Westwood.
Angelo.
Because I, unlike the others, am an expert witness here this evening, should I be sworn in?
Yes.
Promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Why don't you just give brief qualifications? I know you used to serve as the planner of this borough, but just
Go through the qualifications.
just quickly.
Just ask me what they are, and I'll tell everybody.
Please outline your credentials for the board.
Thank you. I have a master's degree in city and regional planning from Rutgers University. That was obtained back in 1975. I received my planner's license by the state of New Jersey in 1980, and I'm also certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners and a member of the American Planning Association. I am a former board member of the state planners licensing board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burgess.
Have you reviewed the proposed master plan reexamination by Ms. Gregory?
Yes, I have. I've also reviewed the master plan documents in my firm prepared quite a number of years ago, and other reexamination reports and housing plans that have been prepared on behalf of the borough.
Have you formed a professional opinion?
Yes, I have.
Could you please share that with the board?
Certainly. Before I share my final conclusions, I would like to give some background information, because I think, based on the comments and the questions that have been asked, there's something that seems to be lacking here, and I think it needs to be addressed. First and foremost, a master plan reexamination report is not a master plan. In fact, if you look at Ms. Gregory's page 1, where she enumerates the 5 questions that are asked of a preparation of a reexamination report, item number 4, I believe, specifically says that you're making recommendations for a master plan that will come out of this kind of study. So to answer some of the questions from the public, if this document were to be approved by this board, at some point, there needs to be a master plan prepared that takes these recommendations and folds them into the concept of the land use plan element with goals and objectives, planning recommendations, policy statements, and specific density FAR recommendations and the like. And I say that because in a number of instances, some of that information is contained in this document, but in many instances, that information is not contained in this document. So in no way, shape, or form is this a master plan document. Now, having said that, one of the things that one typically does when you're doing such a broad brush series of recommendations to change the quality and character of a municipality is to evaluate its impacts, to evaluate the manner in which it's consistent with sound planning design criteria, and to evaluate whether or not in the end the recommendations contained in this kind of document are arbitrary and capricious and therefore don't merit an approval by the board. Now, when we look at one of the underlying precepts of this document, it says that one of the basic elements of this document is that you want to create a zone plan that reflects established development patterns and densities. Now, Ms. Gregory had been asked, well, what are the densities that exist in the community, in the southern part of the municipality? And she was unable to point to any specific densities to buttress her argument that the proposed 50 and 100 and 110 units to the acre reflect established development patterns. I can give you that information because I took the time to analyze your tax maps, to analyze your tax records, and to analyze prior approvals to find out what the densities are. So for example, where we have 1 Hudson at block 91.01, lot 1.01, which is approved for 168 units at a density of 54 units to the acre. This proposed master plan recommends for that site 100 to 110 units to the acre, the R5 designation. Now, in some respects, one would say, well, the site's already developed. But this proposal does in fact indicate that additional numbers of units could occur on that site. In fact, if you do the math, it could accommodate an additional 170 dwelling units on this site, over and above what already exists on the site. And one of the reasons why that is so important is that in 2 or 3 specific sections of this re-examination document, it specifically says that the recommendations are designed to allow for expansions of existing non-conforming uses. So if you have these existing non-conforming uses, the document contemplates additional development. Now, we're not talking about vacant sites, we're talking about developed sites that may have the potential for an additional development opportunity. The Alexander, for example, is proposed to be zoned MXD2. MXD2 would permit 100 units to the acre. Well, the Alexander is developed at less than 60 units to the acre, indicating a significant amount of additional development potential. The North Star project, also recommended for MXD2, is developed at less than 50 units to the acre. Again, it could allow for 100 to 110 units to the acre. We could talk about Arolex Infinity, we could talk about Mayval, we could talk about Aventine, we could talk about St. Moritz. All of those projects are developed at one level, and in each and every instances, the intensity contemplated for those sites in this document are substantially greater than exists on the site today. Now, beyond that, the document says you want to establish zoning and planning that's consistent with established development patterns. So we also look at other projects that aren't affected by this site, but reflect the established development pattern. So we have City Place, for example, which is developed at less than 40 units to the acre. We have Independence Harbor, which is developed at 25 units to the acre. And when you look at that pattern going along the waterfront, you have these densities, and then the Quonka site is recommended at 110 units to the acre. Now, if the underlying philosophy is we want to mirror established zone developments, how is this proposal remotely doing that? In many instances, we're talking about 2, 3, or 4 times the amount of development that exists in the neighborhood. And inconsistent with that, in contrast to that, you have this recommendation for 100 to 110 units to the acre. In point of fact, I couldn't find any development that was higher than 67 units to the acre in the municipality, and that's the St. Moritz. Everything else is significantly below. So when you think about the municipal land use law and how it contemplates the fact that a proper review considers whether recommendations are arbitrary and capricious or not, I think this recommendation is it exemplifies what those terms mean, because they're clearly inconsistent with what's contemplated. Now, beyond that, let's talk about the impacts of the project, of the proposal on the community. Because one of the things that a good planner would do is say, if I make this recommendation, it's going to result in X number of units, X number of public school children, the amount of traffic potential, and if he or she can't handle the traffic considerations, the planners typically are not traffic experts, you recommend that the municipality bring in a traffic consultant to do that evaluation for you, especially in a place like Edgewater, where it takes a half an hour probably just to drive up and down the street. It is so important to do. So what do we have? When you look at each and every one of the sites that are being considered for a new zone district, and you add up all of the potential for redevelopment here, we're talking about somewhat in excess of 4,000 dwelling units. Now, that's a nice number. What does it mean? Well, first of all, let's recognize the fact that in the municipality, there's something less, a little less than 6,600 dwelling units at present here. So we're going to add 4,000 units, or actually it's 4,200 units to that 6,500 unit figure. What does that mean in terms of population? What does that mean in terms of school impacts? Well, if we look at population, and if we were simply to assume 1.5 persons per dwelling unit, those 4,200 units would generate an additional 6,300 residents to the municipality. Now, you have about 12,000 and change as your population today. Add another 6,300 to that, to your current figure, and then imagine what the quality of life and the carrying capacity of the land would be. In addition to that, let's talk about the number of public school attendees that would be generated by this project. And in order to do this, I assumed for the moment that you would have a 15% set aside for affordable housing units. And the reason I did that is you have to recognize that affordable households typically generate more public school attendees than market rate units. When I did the math and all the numbers, even when we assume Ms. Gregory's one public school attendee for 20 dwelling units, you would end up with minimally 340 additional public school children in the municipality. And the statistics suggest that about 2/3 of that total would be in the lower grades. So what that means is here we are in a municipality that just built an elementary school, and the day it opened, it was over capacity. You're already talking about the need for new school sites based upon existing development and existing approval. And here we have this additional growth potential staring you in the face. Thank you. It's partly open. I hope that's from you. That'll extend. I was afraid it was some bull. So this all bespeaks the idea that where a statute says don't act in arbitrary and capricious fashion, and you see these kind of implications for your growth and your limitations in terms of school capacity, roadway capacity, carrying capacity of the land, you begin to come to the conclusion, and I don't think there is any other conclusion, that the proposal is inappropriate, arbitrary, and capricious, and the proposal should be denied. Now, when one looks at the details contained in this document, there's a number of things I need to point out. I found that in a number of instances, there's inconsistencies between the text, the mapping, and tables in the report. And I'll just cite one example. The Alexander building. On table 15, I think it's page 21, it identifies the Alexander as recommended for the MX2 zone district. In the text, on the other hand, it recommends an R5 zone district. The significance here is that the R5 zone district allows greater building height. And this kind of inconsistency is found in 2 or 3 other locations where, in one instance, the recommendation for a particular site is MXD 2, and in another instance, a specific recommendation for the same site is R5. Well, I know Mr. Dickus, when he was speaking earlier on behalf of Cliffside Park, his big concern seemed to be, or the former Cliffside Park's big concern seemed to be the manner in which buildings will rise to a certain height and effective use of Cliffside Park residents. Well, again, the significance here is that depending on whether you're in an R5 or an MXD2 or a 2 zone, you can either be at a maximum 14-story building height or 20-plus stories. And because of an interesting feature of the development regulations section recommendations here, for every 1% reduction in building coverage in the MXD2 zone, excuse me, in the R5 zone, you can go up a whole other floor. So that has significant consequences for your client, Mr. Victus. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Very aware of it. I have my plan with it.
Ah, I forgot.
I don't try
I
to.
thought he was your engineer.
I need somebody who knows what to do.
I would like confirmation on one point, and that is that the last re-examination report the municipality undertook was in fact the 2010 document? Could somebody confirm that for me?
Yes.
Okay. There's two reasons why I asked that. In one instance, I'm not getting at all into the issue of litigation, but a brief prepared by the borough attorney, 18 different locations in that brief, indicated that there was a 2012 re-examination report. Ms. Gregory's report, in one instance, she references a 2013 re-examination report. So that's where the confusion arose. But beyond that, assuming that the 2012 document that you referred to earlier is in fact a land use plan element, quite frankly, I have no reason to believe it's not. I've looked at it. It is a land use plan amendment to your master plan. The municipal land use rule does in fact require that when you go through this re-examination exercise, you identify or you study the last re-examination report and all master plan amendments undertaken since that date. Well, this document does in fact go through the 2010 master plan and assesses it. But it does not do that to the 2012 land use amendment. In fact, the only single reference to that document is in the introduction, where it's just a simple statement that says there was this document adopted in 2012. I would suggest that that suggests that statutorily this document is deficient on its face, because it didn't address that point. One of the last things I just want to bring up is that in the text of this re-examination report, there's a specific statement that the, and I'll quote, and the focus of the report is to, amongst other things, quote, tweak the zoning that currently exists. And I would suggest that for those of us that understand the word tweak and what its definition is, the definition simply relates to changing something slightly to achieve your aims. Going from densities that are 20 and 25 to the acre to 100 to the acre, or changing a zone that did not permit any residential development to permitting 100 to 110 units to the acre, is not a tweaking of a code. And for all those reasons that I've been enunciated, I would strongly urge you to not approve this document. Thank you.
I have one quick final comment or request even. There's a lot of open issues that have been raised. I know I had 3 questions from Ms. Gregory that she couldn't answer in terms of the density, the maximum height, the population impact. We request that the board obtain that information and a lot of the information and inquiries that were raised by the public before deciding on whether to adopt or recommend this proposed master plan amendment, considering the traffic, the schools, the importance of view, and how fragile they are in Edgewater. I think that information is needed before this board can make an educated recommendation.
Captain, do you have any comments you want to make?
Well, Mr. Burgess raised a couple of legal issues, which obviously I can't really comment on. However, what I will say is that I do have densities of projects, and according to my calculations, he was incorrect on some of them. So I'd like to see, his data, where he got it from, because that was consideration when we did the land use settlement in 2012. I mean, obviously I can disagree that it was arbitrary and capricious, because we did take a look at school children and community facilities element, and this time I think that we're approaching it in terms of going forward with redevelopment of the Hess property. Because this was the subject of the land use element, and in fact, some of the areas that were zoned for higher density and taller units were rezoned to the MXD3, which was talked about earlier. So, it's up to the, it's up to the board. I don't know about the legal issues. I thought that I did address the land use element of the master plan in this document, but again, that's a legal issue. And I did address the community facilities element as well. And I did address the 2010 examination, which was the last examination.
Let me just ask you a question. Mr. Burgess brought up a couple of different sites where the building was going to be 67 units, but it's approved for, it could be 110.
Well, actually, the only proposed, I think that was slightly incorrect. The max is 100 dwelling units an acre. If it's a senior development, it would be at 110. And that is because one of the senior developments is actually at 108 dwelling units an acre. So in order to make that conforming, that's why we chose the.
That's Waterford.
So, yes, that's Waterford.
Okay.
So that was, I think that maybe it was just a misstatement on his behalf when you talked about the R5 district, because it's only senior projects, it's not market rate, it's senior.
If I may, that was the reason why I focused on the 100 to the acre, because I was aware of that. But if Ms. Gregory is asking you to share the information, because the re-examination report is the public document, I'd be happy to share information with her. You could send me your database, I'll review it and then send everything back to you. And I assume that means I don't need the conclusion of this evening. I'd just like to know, when will this hearing be continued to?
I'm not sure the hearing is going to be. We haven't discussed that yet. Council, please take a second. Thank you. Mr. Burgess, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You're a licensed planner. You've done work in Edgewater, Fort Lee, Cliffside Park. You've done work for high rises. What is the state? What's for high rises when you have children? What is it compared to a mid-rise? The children go to school in a high rise.
It varies. It varies dramatically. I was interested in Mr. Peacock comments, because we're starting to see the same thing, that as this area is developing and becomes more and more dense and lack of land for other than both attached residential or mid or high rise, we're seeing an uptick on the number of families that are occupying mid-rise and high-rise buildings. And whereas historically the numbers have been more disparate between a mid-rise and a high-rise building, it's less so today. We've run numbers for a number of projects throughout the state over the past couple of years, and we're starting to see that the number of school children per dwelling unit get closer together between the mid-rise and high-rise development. I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but I think Catherine's 1 per 20 is a little on the low side today, but I use that to be as conservative as possible. I actually believe that there will be something more than 340 public school children coming out of these respective units.
You put 15% for all these developments of cover.
Yes. And that also is being generous. You know, as you know, the COA regulations still talk about a 20% set aside. Although the round 3 methodology has been tossed, the underlying round 1 and 2 regulations are still in effect. And they talk about a 20% set aside, but for rentals, it's a 15% set aside. And I did notice that in the report, in Ms. Gregory's report, there is a reference to giving a bonus to developers if they provide a 15% set aside. Quite frankly, I found it ironic if you're going from 25 units to the acre to 100 units to the acre, that that's not sufficient bonus already.
Okay.
But irrespective of that, that's why I chose that number.
When you were at Fort Lee, you did work for high rises there.
I never represented the borough.
You represented a private developer?
We represented many private developers
Okay,
there.
specifically one up with high rises now being built.
We represented the two 47-story
Okay.
buildings. Yes.
What was the per capita for per child per unit that you projected for that building?
We probably used 1 or 15, but I'd have to double check that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Catherine, anything else?
Not this time, other than, in terms of the ratio for the school children, while Mr. Burge might consider the data, it actually, what I was talking about came right from the Board of Education. And so it's Edgewater specific, it's
Right.
not statewide, it's not countywide, it's Edgewater specific.
That we're getting one.
So 1 for 10 for mid-rise and 1 for 20 for high-rise.
Right.
That was only.
And what did you just say, Mr. 115 you figured for the one on Fort Lee?
I
So right in
think
the
so.
middle.
It's been 2 years since I looked at that report. So I guess the irony is that I believe in Edgewater, the mid-rise structure is 8 to 10 stories. And the report certainly doesn't identify why. If high-rises are contemplated as anything greater than 10 stories, why you must go to 20 stories.
Okay, so the discrepancy, what the difference between a mid-rise and a high-rise?
There's no discrepancy. The question is, why do you have to go from 10 to 20
Right.
to gain the
Okay.
benefit that she's
Okay.
suggesting?
And Ms. Gregory's data is 5 to 7 years old, that report.
Okay.
It's not based on a report, it's based on.
The Board of Education state is almost 7 years
Hold on,
old.
please, thank you. Yeah, Catherine, go on.
The data was not based on a report that I received from the Board of Education. It was received from the superintendent's office.
Oh,
So it's.
she told you.
Okay. Valerie, Catherine, go on.
Okay, if it was contained in a report, I don't know, but when we get the data numbers directly from the superintendent of schools, it's an ongoing number, just like the enrollments are ongoing. So that's where the data arrived from.
So it's Hardy.
Yes.
Was it in writing?
Anybody else on the board? I'll just go over a few things because I know you're waiting. Number one, in this report, we had somebody stand up today and talk about sidewalks, the importance of the sidewalks, and everything else. We are encouraged and we want that to move forward in any new projects or developments.
Yeah, if it wasn't clearly stated within the context of reexamination, I think that it's.
It was brought up.
In other documents, and I think that with the statements that are made here in terms of the objectives about having a walkable community, while, yes, it's implied, however, yes, we can go a step further, but then again, what are the recommendations could be when we take this reexamination and do incorporate it into a master plan document. Then we also talk again about sidewalks, and I don't know if you remember the land use element from 2012, but we did make some recommendations about streetscape enhancements and the like. So maybe what it needs to do is it needs to go, to coin a term, broad brush across the entire Edgewater community rather than just talking about, the southern edge of town.
Okay. Also, we always hear about the traffic studies. Why didn't we do a traffic study?
Number one, it's not required as part of one of these documents, but,
Isn't it done by the county?
well, for River Road specifically, yeah, so we could do our own study, I guess, if we want to. I still believe in give and take. We do have another ferry stop that has been approved. And I think one of the problems with providing public transportation here is that I don't know that there's enough, as I call it, critical mass to provide that public transportation. The way that I'm looking at it is also when you have a dense environment, people do end up walking more, so we do need to provide sidewalks. We do have the walkway, which hopefully, is going to be maintained and improved from its current condition.
Doesn't connect.
Sandy, because I know lots of developers have told me that people are going to walk around that walkway. So I think between the ferries, potentially an increased bus service, and we may want to have conversations with New Jersey Transit about different options regarding public transportation. And just as well, it wasn't contained in my report, but what I can tell you is that there have been studies done about how people travel to work and how they operate. And the newer generations are really embracing not owning a car, more walking, more biking, working from home with telecommuting and e-commerce. So we are seeing a shift in how people operate their daily lives. And so that, I think, is something to consider going forward when we're talking about the densities that we're proposing here. Everyone assumes that it's just going to be exponentially worse with the traffic. And I don't know that that's really the case, because I think that what we're talking about is people that are used to a certain condition, but there is a shift in really sort of the social behavior sciences of the next generation, and I think that's really going to come to light. I mean, it's evidenced by things like Zipcar and City Bike in the City, shared biking programs, and the like. So I think that those are things that, again, probably through the next master plan, we can definitely further those types of goals for this community.
Thank you. Mrs. Angelo? Anything else?
Just wanted to point out, were there any other scrivener's errors aside from the one error with the OR1 that should have been MXD?
There were a couple of corrections need to be made to the table, and obviously one needs to be made to the map.
And you're well aware of the changes that need to be made, correct?
Yes. The Alexander should not be R5; it should be MXD2. And I'm still not quite sure why. I guess the two properties that Mary identified, we have is listed as being in the MXD zones, but they're public property, publicly owned, so they should be the public district. And the one riparian property, which is block 96, lot 4.01, that is 115 River Road, that should be MXD1. That was probably just a typo.
All right, so those are typos that we will correct.
Yeah. Yes. Those are the ones that we corrected on the table, on the map, and then I need to check the text, because they also I think it was Mr. Burgess said that there was in one section I recommended the document recommended the MXD2, and one section recommended the R5. So I have to look at that, because I thought I did review this to eliminate inconsistencies, but I have to find that section.
All right, well, that you haven't determined that yet, but
Yes,
you are well aware of each of the typos that needs to be corrected.
Yes.
What else, Mr. Angelo?
That's all.
Anything else from the board? No. Looking for either a motion to move forward, or?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make.
I apologize.
Necessary changes she has to make, we'll go ahead and I'm also incorporating some points and.
Make a motion.
I would like to have Catherine make necessary changes. I'd like her to take into consideration some of the points that we want to play public. I'm sorry, I have a sore throat.
We're all sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
welcome to the club.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment before we go any further. Two things, that this is going to go before the mayor and council make its final decision on this. Number two, I'm concerned about traffic in schools and towns. In schools and towns, I've lived here my entire life. But there's one thing I want to say about traffic. I don't know, with a show of hands, how many people take the bus to work into the city here?
Well, I did.
I do. I've been doing it for 25 years.
Me too.
I've given, or the ferry, indoor ferry, okay, I've taken the combination thereof. I take the bus to the light rail to Hoboken, I take the ferry across. I've given myself an hour to get to the city since 1988. In 1988, when I started working on Wall Street, it took me approximately 45 minutes to an hour to get to work.
So it take me
Agreed?
45 minutes to get to Midtown.
Right, and even downtown is the same thing. I give myself an hour, it's usually 45 minutes to an hour. It was that way in 1988, it's the same as it is now.
Yeah, because the
Okay.
bus service was
No.
worse then.
Well, no,
It came once an hour back then.
well, I know, but I'm just
That's why,
saying,
not
it's,
because of the
I'm not
traffic.
saying that the traffic hasn't increased in
not
town,
because
but
of
I'm
the
just
traffic.
saying, the
Same amount of
community wise,
time.
it's the same amount of time as, I've been doing this for 25 years. It's the same thing. I mean, and we should talk to New Jersey Transit about having more buses in the morning. I think that's a good idea.
I drive, it used to take me
Well, that's
12
why-
minutes, it takes me an hour to get out of town.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I started.
No, it's all right.
No, but I'm just saying, you know, I mean, and what I do is, you know, the traffic in town, you know, the traffic studies is what we need, but I'm just saying, basically, that's the same commute I've done for 25 years, and it's nothing different.
Okay.
Left myself an hour, it takes an hour and a half.
We have a motion on the floor to,
You take the bus or the ferry?
The combination there, bus.
Sorry,
no problem.
because the bus is not that good.
It's not bad.
Right, I'm sorry.
All right, for those of us who drive, it's
All right,
bad.
I hold it, stop. We have a motion on the floor. The motion is to not do anything tonight, to incorporate some of the, seconded by the mayor, to incorporate from the public, of the things that were said from the board, and then we'll reconvene at a special meeting or the regular March meeting. Okay? We have a second by the mayor, can we have a roll call?
Okay, Mrs. Kelly.
Yes.
Councilman Martellino.
Yes.
Mayor Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. McFarland.
Yes.
Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
And Chairman Sultan.
Yes. Thank you very much. We also have a, minutes, we also have a resolution. Counselor, if you don't mind.